She was erased, not cast out, not punished, not judged. Erased. Her name was removed. Her story was buried. Her existence was quietly deleted from the version of the Bible that billions of people have read their entire lives. And here's what should frighten you. It worked. You grew up hearing about Adam. You grew up hearing about Eve. You heard about the serpent, the apple, the fall of man. But nobody told you about the woman who was there before all of it. And now I need you to ask yourself something right now, and I need you to be honest. Why? Why would an entire human being, the first woman God ever created, just disappear from the story? Think about that for a second. We're not talking about a footnote being cut. We're not talking about a minor detail being left out. We're talking about a person, a whole soul, someone who stood in the Garden of Eden, breathed the same first air as Adam, looked at the same untouched sky, and then one day gone, like she never existed. Now here's what's going to shake you to your core. The people who buried her story, they knew exactly what they were doing, because Lilith wasn't erased because she was evil. She wasn't erased because she was dangerous. She was erased because she did something that the ancient world could not handle. She said no. That's it. That's the whole crime. She looked at the life that was handed to her, the role she was assigned, the place she was told to stay in, and she said, I was not made for this. And the moment she said it, they rewrote history to make sure you would never, ever look at her and think, I understand her, but you will stay with me, because we are about to go somewhere most Bible channels are too afraid to go. Now, let's go back to the very first morning the world ever had and meet the woman they hoped you'd never know existed. Before Eve ever took her first breath, someone else was already there, already breathing, already watching. Her feet were on ground that had never been touched. Her lungs were full of air that had never been breathed. She was the first woman God ever made. And God, the God who split oceans, who spoke mountains into existence, who breathed galaxies into the dark. That same God looked at her and decided she was good. Her name was Lilith. And for one brief, golden, heartbreaking moment, everything was perfect. Now open your Bible, Genesis 1, verse 27. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Them, not him first, not her second. Them, together, same moment, same breath, same earth. Now turn the page, chapter 2, and watch everything change. Suddenly, Adam is alone. Suddenly, it's only his lungs being filled, only his feet touching the ground. He walks through Eden, naming animals, tending trees, completely alone. And then God stops, looks at this man surrounded by every perfect thing ever created, and says 4 words that should shake you every time you read them. It is not good. Genesis 2:18. Not good in a perfect world. So God puts Adam into a deep sleep, reaches into his side, takes a rib, and builds Eve. And the whole world exhales. There, man, woman, garden. We know this story. But do you? Because there are 2 women in Genesis, one built from a rib in chapter 2, and one built from the earth itself in chapter 1. Same earth as Adam, same moment, same breath, same God. And then she disappears. Between chapter 1 and chapter 2, she just vanishes. No explanation, no goodbye, no closure. Like someone took an eraser to her existence and wiped until there was nothing left but a ghost. This isn't a translation error. This isn't a typo. This is 2 completely different creation stories sitting side by side in the same book. And the only way they make sense together is if the woman in chapter 1 and the woman in chapter 2 are not the same person. The ancient rabbis saw it. The Kabbalistic scholars saw it. The writers of the alphabet of Ben Sira, drawing on traditions thousands of years old. They pulled on that thread, and what unraveled changed everything. She's standing in that garden, the first woman, the forgotten one. She doesn't know yet what's coming. She doesn't know that the man beside her, made from the same dust, the same earth, the same single holy act of creation, is about to look at her and say something that will light a fire in her chest that never goes out. So before we go any further, I need you to ask yourself just one question. If you were made equal and someone told you that you weren't, what would you do? Because Lilith had an answer, and it is the most dangerous, electric, human moment in all of ancient scripture. Now I need you to understand something about Lilith before we get into what happened. She wasn't angry when this started. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't volatile. She wasn't the creature of darkness the ancient texts would eventually turn her into. She was just awake. She saw the world clearly. She saw herself clearly. She knew what she was made of, literally, because the ground beneath her feet was the same ground she came from, the same earth, the same dust, the same raw material that God used to build the man standing next to her. She didn't think she was better than Adam. She just refused to believe she was less. And Adam had a different idea. The ancient text, the alphabet of Ben Sira, doesn't dress this up. It doesn't soften it. It tells you exactly what happened, and it tells you with the kind of bluntness that makes you realize this argument is as old as humanity itself. Adam came to Lilith and he told her, "You will lie beneath me." That's it. No discussion, no negotiation, just a statement, a decree, a position assigned without consent by someone who had decided that being first meant being in charge. Now I want you to feel that moment, not from the outside, from the inside. You are Lilith. You are standing in the most beautiful place that has ever existed. The air is warm. The trees are heavy with fruit. Every living thing around you is at peace. And the man beside you, the man made from the same handful of earth, the same divine breath, the same singular act of God, looks at you and tells you not who you are, but where you belong, beneath him. What do you feel? Because here's what Lilith felt, and the text is startlingly clear about this. She didn't feel fear. She didn't feel shame. She felt something white hot and completely unshakable rise up from the very center of who she was. And she looked at Adam straight in the eyes, and she said, "Why should I lie beneath you? We are equal. We were both made from the earth." 6 words. We were both made from the earth. 6 words that should have been the beginning of a conversation, but instead became the beginning of a war. Because Adam didn't hear those words as a truth. He heard them as a challenge. And in that garden, in that perfect, untouched, sacred space, 2 people who were supposed to be partners became something else entirely. Opponents. They argued. The text tells us they argued. Back and forth, neither one willing to move, neither one willing to fold. 2 people who had been made equal standing in a garden built for them both, fighting over who gets to be more equal than the other. And here's what nobody talks about. Adam had every advantage. He was physically stronger. He had been in the garden longer. He had named the animals, which in ancient culture meant he had authority over them. Everything around him had been, in some way, already submitted to him. Everything except her. She wouldn't submit. She wouldn't bend. And the more she refused, the more desperate Adam became. So Adam did what people do when they can't win an argument with logic. He went to get backup. He called on God. "She won't listen to me," he said. "She won't submit." And in that moment, in that single devastating moment, the fate of Lilith was sealed. Because now it wasn't just a domestic dispute in a garden. Now it was a woman standing against God's appointed order. Now it was a woman who had been told, by the most powerful force in all of existence, to take her place, and she was still saying no. Now I want you to sit with something, because this is the part of the story where most people, even people who sympathize with Lilith, expect her to back down. This is the part where the rational thing, the safe thing, the thing that would have kept her in paradise, kept her in comfort, kept her in the presence of God, was to simply say, "Fine, you win." 2 words. That's all it would have taken. 2 words and she keeps everything. And she says something else entirely. She opens her mouth. And what comes out isn't surrender. it isn't compromise, that the moment the words left her lips, the garden couldn't hold her anymore. She spoke the name of God. Not a name, not a title, the name, the secret name, the true name, the name so sacred that even angels spoke it in whispers. The name that gave the one who spoke it power over everything, and she used it, not to pray, not to worship, but to leave. She rose into the air, and she flew, out of the garden, over the walls of paradise, into the open, wild, ungoverned world beyond Eden, free, terrifyingly, completely, irrevocably free. And Adam stood there, watching her go, the first man who ever watched a woman walk away, realizing too late that he never deserved her in the first place. But here's what you need to understand. Her leaving wasn't the end of the story. It was barely the beginning. Because the moment Lilith crossed the boundary of Eden, heaven noticed, and God himself, made a decision. She has to come back. Nobody runs from God and gets away with it. Nobody. Adam hid behind a tree. Found. Jonah sailed to the edge of the world. Found. Every soul who ever tried to outrun heaven. Found. Except her. Lilith didn't just leave Eden. She weaponized her exit. She rose into the air and flew. Adam watched her go. And then he did the only thing he could do. He ran to God. She's gone. She won't come back. She won't submit. And God didn't send a message, didn't call her name from the sky, sent 3 angels, Sinoi, Sansonoi, Simangaloth, 3 of heaven's most powerful beings. One mission, bring her back. Now feel the weight of that. The God who created galaxies with a word needed 3 angels to retrieve one woman who said no. What does that tell you about how dangerous her no really was? They found her at the Red Sea, dark water, wild wind, standing alone at the edge of a wilderness that had no name yet, like she'd been waiting for them. 3 angels of divine authority, and she didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't even blink. They delivered the message. God commands you, return to Adam, return to the garden. She said, no. They threatened her. She made them a counteroffer. I cannot go back, she said. Not won't, cannot. And then she said something that froze those 3 angels where they stood. Something so raw, so final, so irreversible that they stopped threatening her and just listened. I was made to bring harm, she told them. This is what I am now. Don't call her a monster yet, because what she's actually saying is that this is what exile builds. This is what you create when you take something made for equality, made for love, made for partnership, and throw it into the wilderness and tell it, you are not enough. She wasn't born this, she was made this by paradise itself. The angels delivered their final verdict. Every day, 100 of your children will die. That is the price of your defiance. Lilith looked at them and accepted it because she understood something in that moment that Adam never did, that a life on your knees in paradise is still a life on your knees. The angels returned to Eden, empty-handed. For the first time since creation began, God's word came back undelivered. But the story doesn't end at the Red Sea, because what Lilith did next changes everything you thought you knew about Eve, about the serpent, about the fall of man, and about who was really behind it. She was alone. Not the quiet kind of alone, the kind of alone where you are the only human being on earth outside of paradise, with nothing ahead but darkness and nothing behind but a garden that looked you in the face and said, you are not welcome here. Most people break in that silence. Lilith built a kingdom in it. The ancient texts say she settled in the wilderness near the Red Sea, and in that darkness, she found others, fallen things, rejected things, creatures that lived in the spaces where God's light didn't reach. They recognized her immediately because she was one of them now. And then she met Samael. Remember that name, because Samael isn't minor. He isn't background noise. The Kabbalistic texts describe him as the angel of death, the great accuser, the one who moves through the spaces between the sacred and the profane. Some traditions don't just compare him to Satan, they say he is Satan. And he found Lilith burning in that wilderness, exiled, furious, carrying a fire that paradise had lit in her and then tried to extinguish. And he recognized exactly what she was, two flames in the dark, finding each other. And together they built something that made heaven uncomfortable. Not a garden, a kingdom. Lilith's kingdom. Where nobody told her where to lie. Where nobody assigned her a position. Where nobody looked at her and said, "Stay beneath him." In the wilderness that God gave her as punishment, she built a throne. But here's what they don't tell you. Underneath the crown, she was bleeding. Because remember what the angels told her at the Red Sea? 100 of your children will die every single day. Every day. That wasn't a warning. That was a wound that never healed. And the ancient texts say something that wrecks every monster image you've ever had of Lilith. They say she wept. Every day, 100 times. The queen of demons, crying in the dark. Can you hold both of those things at once? The throne and the tears, the kingdom and the grief? Because that is Lilith. Not one or the other. Both. But grief doesn't stay soft forever. At some point, it hardens. It calcifies into something with edges. Something that looks back at everything that was taken from it and starts making plans. And Lilith looked back at Eden and heard something that changed everything. Adam had a new wife, built from his rib, placed in the garden. Given everything Lilith had been thrown out for demanding, her name, Eve. And the moment Lilith heard that name, something woke up in her that had been waiting, patiently, quietly, dangerously, because she didn't see Eve as a replacement. She saw her as a door, a way back into the story they had tried to erase her from. And she walked toward that door, with every ounce of pain, grief, and fury the wilderness had built in her. And she didn't knock. She walked straight through it, because the voice that found Eve at the tree, the presence that whispered, did God really say that? Some of the oldest scholars in Jewish tradition believe that voice was hers. The serpent in the garden. You've heard about it your entire life. The smooth voice, the dangerous question, the moment that changed the entire trajectory of human history. But here's what nobody ever asked you. What if the serpent wasn't just a serpent? What if that voice, that cunning, calculated, perfectly timed voice that found Eve alone at the tree of knowledge, had a history with that garden? Think about the timing. Lilith has just heard that Adam has a new wife, a woman placed in the exact garden Lilith was thrown out of, given the exact life Lilith was punished for demanding, and suddenly, a serpent appears in Eden. Coincidence? The ancient Jewish text, the alphabet of Ben Sira, and several Kabbalistic traditions don't dance around this. They say Lilith came back, not through the front gate, not as herself, but as the voice, the presence at the tree, the one who walked up to Eve and asked the one question designed to detonate everything. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Genesis 3:1. Now feel how calculated that question is. Lilith, if it was her, didn't go to Adam. She went to Eve. Why? Because Adam was the one who gave her the rule. Adam knew the restriction firsthand, but Eve was new. Eve had been told the rule secondhand. Eve was standing in a garden full of everything she could ever want, with one single restriction and a voice in her ear saying, "Are you sure that's what he said?" That's not random. That's surgical. That's someone who knows exactly how paradise works, because they used to live there. And here's the part that will keep you up tonight. What if Lilith didn't come back for revenge on Adam? What if she came back and for Eve? Not to destroy her, but to wake her up. Think about what the serpent actually said to Eve. You will not certainly die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God. Genesis 3:4-5. Read that again. Your eyes will be opened. You will be like God. That's not the language of destruction. That's the language of liberation. That is someone saying, you were made for more than this. You were made equal. Don't let them make you small. Sound familiar? Because that is exactly what Lilith said to Adam in the garden before she left. We are equal. We were made the same way. The same message. A different garden. A different woman. What if the fall of man wasn't an attack? What if it was a warning? But here's where the story turns cold. Because whether Lilith came back as liberator or destroyer, the result was the same. Eve ate the fruit, Adam followed, and both of them were thrown out of the garden into the same wilderness that Lilith had been surviving alone for God knows how long. And the moment that happened, the people telling this story had a problem, a serious problem, because now there were two women in this narrative, both of whom had defied God's order, both of whom had chosen knowledge over obedience, both of whom had decided that what they were told wasn't the whole truth. And you cannot build a system of control around two women like that. So here's what they did. They kept Eve. They needed Eve because the story required a mother, required a fall, required a beginning to the human narrative. But they rewrote her. They turned her choice into a mistake, her curiosity into a sin, her reaching for knowledge into the reason humanity suffers. And Lilith, they didn't just rewrite her, they deleted her, took her name out of the text, buried her in footnotes, hid her in the spaces between chapters where most people never think to look. And then they built a monster out of the scraps, called her a demon, called her a child killer, called her the queen of darkness and evil and everything to be feared, because a woman you fear is a woman you never stop to understand. And it worked. For thousands of years, it worked. But here's what they couldn't erase. The crack in Genesis, still there. Two creation stories, still there. A woman made from the same earth as Adam, still there. And every person who ever felt too loud for the room they were put in, every soul who was ever told to make themselves smaller, every human being who ever looked at the life they were handed and thought, this wasn't made for me, has been carrying Lilith's story in their chest without even knowing her name. Because Lilith wasn't a demon, she was a mirror. And the reason they buried her, the real reason, wasn't because she was dangerous. It was because she was right. And a woman who is right, in a world built on her being wrong, is the most threatening thing that world has ever seen. Her name was Lilith, the first woman, the forgotten one, the one they spent thousands of years trying to make you afraid of, because they were terrified, and that one day, you'd look at her story and see yourself. And that is the story they never wanted you to know. If this video made you think, made you question, made you feel something you weren't expecting, that's the point. Bible Mysteries exists for exactly this. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and ring that bell, because we are just getting started, and the next story is even deeper.